In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use a 3D effect, which is called Extrude and Bevel, okay? And with that, you can make structures like this house. And I've got a multitude of things I've made, different types of houses. I'm going to show you how to make a more simple house here, something more like this. You can make a dog house, you can make barns, and you can even make buildings like this. Okay? And so let's get started here. We're going to go over and make a new print document. Okay? And that's what you'll need to do for this exercise. And we're going to start off with making a rectangle. Okay? And right now it's a perfect square, which is fine. We could do that. We don't want to stroke on this. Okay? And we want to make a color of some sort. I've got some colors already prearranged here. So I've got, if you want to try to use what I'm using right now, it's 6% magenta, 50% yellow, and 12% black. So it's kind of like a yellow house. Okay? And we're going to take our pen tool and you bring it over. The rectangle needs to stay selected. And you'll see when you come across this line, you'll see intersect, and then you'll see where it lines up. I'm just going to add that point in, okay? And then I'm going to switch to my direct selection tool, which is A. A is a keyboard shortcut. So we click on that, and then we're just going to drag that straight up. After I start dragging, well, see, as long as it's like this, it's fine, okay? You can hold down your shift key too, keep it constrained. That's after you start dragging, okay? And now we get a roof. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select this anchor point here, and I'm going to do Command-C and paste in front. And what that does is it actually copies these two lines. So we don't have to redraw those. And I'm going to get my pen tool, and I'm going to just draw out a very simple roof here. Using my guides, I can see how this is all going. All right, so that's not bad. And I might need to bring the top part down, so I'm getting my direct selection tool and bring it down here. Now let's change the color of that to something, more like that. And if you want to do what I'm doing, you can look at the screen here and see I've got cyan set at 49%, magenta 26, and my black is set at 72. And these are not bad colors for what we're working on, okay? And so we can extrude this structure already, but we need to make the sides. We need to make the windows and the doors, okay? And so in order to do that, we're going to take this shape here and copy it and bring it down here, okay? And the other thing we're going to do is, I'm just going to keep it, doesn't need to be exactly lined up. We need to make the side of this. And so by getting the rectangle tool, I'm going to drag over this and try to get to the same height as that. And we'll just bring this over here. And okay, something like that. Now, let's start making things. I'm going to keep this kind of simple, I was saying, and I'm thinking of making it more kind of like maybe a dollhouse, just so that it won't take you as much time to do. It won't take me as much time to explain everything, because the more windows and the more details, the longer it takes. And so I'm going to make a door, and we're going to make a white frame here. Okay, so I just used my rectangle tool. I want to line it up at the bottom there. And then I'm going to take that shape, copy, Command-C, paste in front. Okay, so shape has to be selected before you do that. So I've selected it, paste in front, and I'm just going to make this a little shorter here. And I'm going to hold down my Alt key or my Option key and bring this in here. And so now we'll have a door, and we'll just make this door color. I don't know. I'm going to pick a color over here. It's kind of a pink door, but let's add some black to it maybe and some yellow and make it more of a red door. Okay, I'll bring the cyan all the way out. But if you're looking at what I'm making here, you can make it sort of like this. If you like the colors I'm using. If you want to totally switch up your colors for this exercise, you can do that, all right? So now I have my door. I might even draw. Let's zoom in here because like I said, the more detail there is, the longer it takes. But we could actually make a little thing here, and I'm going to just use that same gold color, perhaps, and maybe make a. I'm taking an ellipse tool. So that's a rectangle. Let's take the ellipse tool, and we're going to just make a doorknob, and this doorknob will make just a little darker. Let's zoom in here so we can actually see what we're looking at, and we'll just make it slightly darker here, so it's something like that. So now it actually has a kind of what can look like a doorknob. Okay, now let's continue on. We'll get our rectangle tool, and we'll make a window here. We'll make it. We'll have it with a white frame, okay? Just so that the frame of the door and the window are the same here. We'll drag this over a little bit, and then we're going to copy, Command C, paste in front, and I'm going to just hold down my Alt key and drag the sides in from the top, and the top and the end, so the top and bottom are the same. And we're going to do the same thing for the sides, and then maybe go back and just play around with that a little bit, because a lot of times if you do it in proportion, it's not quite right. But anyway, I just play with something like that. And then we want a dark color, and we could probably use the same dark color that we use for the roof, which is not a bad color. Okay, so you can see with the numbers I'm using, or you could make it black. Like I said, you could totally change it up here or make it blue. I'm going to use my line tool here, and I'm just going to draw a line. And let me deselect right now. I've got this selected. So Shift Command A will deselect it. And I just want my line to go cut across like this. I'm holding down my Shift key. Now, I've got nothing here because my line tool does not have any, it doesn't have a stroke or a fill. So let's bring the fill to the front and just put white in, the stroke to the front. I apologize there. And put white in it. And then we'll up the stroke weight. So something kind of like that, all right? And then we're going to take this. I'm going to select the line. I'm going to select this and select the frame. So I'm selecting all those elements. I can group them. And then we're going to drag this on over and copy it. So I'm dragging it. Then I hold down my Alt, my Shift key, so it'll keep it straight over like that. And we'll do one more here, okay? Like this. If we want to do 3, we can. And I'm just playing around with where it's spaced out at. Maybe I'll bring these a little closer here. All right, something kind of like maybe that, all right? Now, I'm going to add an extra bit of detail that will cause us to have some difficulty, perhaps, when we're actually putting this on our extruded structure. But I think it looks kind of cool, and that's why I'm going to try to do it here. I'm going to get my line tool again, and I'm going to make little slats. So it looks like this house has paneling on it, and I'm going to use kind of a grayish color here. We'll just put in some gray there. We could put a little blue in it perhaps, and bring down the stroke weight here just a little bit here to maybe 4%, and then we're going to duplicate that. So I'm going to bring this up here, dragging it, then I'll hold down my Alt and my Shift key so it will actually replicate it and keep it just like that. Okay, now, as you may guess, we were going to use our blend tool. And so let's get that's the shape builder tool. Our blend tool is down here. W is the keyboard shortcut. We're going to just click here and click here. And then we're going to go and double click the blend tool. And that will bring this up. So as I've stated before in another tutorial, the blends were used many years ago before the gradient came along. And if we changed one of the colors on this, by the way, it would make a gradient. But what I'm going to do is use specified steps. And we'll bring this down to maybe, I don't know, let's see 8. Let's see what that looks like. That's not bad. Maybe 9. Actually, no, 8, maybe 7. Let me try 7 here. Let's see what 7 looks like. 7 doesn't look bad, okay? And you know what? I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to bring down the stroke weight to that, all right? And what we're going to do is I'm going to take this and, whoops, I've isolated by mistake because I double clicked it. So let's get out of isolation mode. Okay, so and if that happens to you, you just click on those arrows, or you can get out of isolation mode over there. Anyway, let me just drag this over here and hold down my Alt and Shift key. And we're going to duplicate it, but we're going to stretch this out a little bit. Don't hold down your Shift key, okay, because we don't want to scale it up. We just want to drag it over so it's longer. And right now, scale strokes and effects is on, so we'll take it back down to 3. So if you have scale, strokes, and effects on your settings set up, it will actually increase the stroke weight by doing that, and that's what I had to do, is turn that off. So let's take this first one here and go to Object and Expand. Okay. Now, when I do that, this turns this into all these lines. Oops, don't want to do that. Just under Command Y, you can see here what I'm building here. So that turns it into lines, but really I want those turned into shapes, because I'm going to crop. And when you crop a line doesn't crop the same way as a shape, because if I was to crop it right there, this would stick out a little bit because it would have a corner. And so we're just going to go Object and Expand one more time. And now it's going to turn our fill and stroke to shape. So when we look at it, in this mode, you can see it's a shape now, okay? So we're going to take that and hold down our Shift key and select the house shape. And then let's get our Shape Builder tool. Shift M is our keyboard shortcut. And hold down the Alt key or Option key and just drag over all the things that are sticking out here. Okay, and then we'll just delete like that. Okay, which is cool. It's a fast method here. Oops, I didn't get them all. There we go. Oh, I got to come over here, do the same thing. So I got to select this set of blends and do Expand. Okay, and then we're going to do Expand one more time. So they become shapes. And then we're going to select the house shape, or the rectangle back there, and we'll do Shift M, and we'll just get rid of all the things that are sticking outside here. You can click, or you can drag over like I'm doing here, and this will get rid of everything that's sticking out. So now we have our little house with siding. The only problem is, as you can see, is the siding, these slats go over the windows and the door. So let's take that blend there. Let's take this. This is all grouped now. It's no longer a blend, by the way, because these are just individual shapes that are grouped. We're going to take it and do Command X. That cuts it. We're going to select that house shape back there. And it's kind of interesting what it's done here with this house shape, as you can see, because when we cut it, it actually installed these little anchor points, which is fine. Okay. Anyway, we're going to do Paste in Front, and that will put it behind the windows and door. Same thing over here. Select this, Command X. Now it's interesting. It did not add those anchor points to the sides here and up there. That's unusual. Anyway, do Paste in Front by selecting that background rectangle, and that will put it behind the windows. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to drag over and get this one side here, and we're going to bring up our symbols palette. I already have my symbols palette torn off here, okay? And if you can't find it, you go up under Window, and you'll find it all the way down here, Symbols, okay? Anyway, we're going to drag this in and make it a symbol. And we're going to make it a graphic static symbol, okay? And so there it is as a symbol. And the great thing about symbols is they are editable. They're very easy to edit, because you can edit a symbol and it will change the color of everything. And we'll see what that does later on. I'm just telling you that right now. That's why, but this is necessary to do in order to put this on our extruded house there. And do OK. There we go. Now we got those two forms there. Now, what we're going to do is, let's go up here to this house shape. Let's group the roof to the house. So select both of those and do Command G. Okay, we can move this over here perhaps. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to Effect, 3D and Materials, Extrude and Bevel. And as you can see here, it's actually extruded this way. And all we got to do is add some depth to it. All right. So we're going to add some depth to it. Like that. And that's how it does. It's awesome. It does a great job of this. And mind you, you can take any kind of shape and extrude it. What I'm going to, and by the way, right now it's set on presets. If you see what I did, I've scrolled down here. I wasn't explaining this here. I don't want to twist it. I don't want to taper it. You could try this, which will cut a hole in it, which is interesting. So that turns off caps for hollow appearance, which is very interesting. But I'm going to keep that there. Anyway, what I'm going to do is we are going to go down to our presets here, just so you can see. Right now, I'm going to keep this as off-axis front, but I just want to show you all these other things you can show it as. We wanted to show the left view. We can show the left view. We wanted to show the bottom. We could show the bottom. If we wanted to play around with off-axis front there, we've done that before. Off-axis left does that. We could do even isometrics, because I'm going to have you create a 3D map, and you may want to create an isometric looking map. And if you did that, you could do an isometric house like that, okay? But I'm going to, like I said, this is just some things you could do. You can also individually rotate things if you want to rotate more. You can individually rotate things here like this. It's really cool. You can do all kinds of rotating. Anyway, I'm going to go back to off-axis front. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put perspective on it. So perspective kind of bows it a little bit, which is kind of neat here. So we'll have something like that. Now, the next thing I'm going to do to this is I'm going to go to my materials. And you could put materials on this, but the problem is we won't be able to put our windows on there. And I've tried it, and I'll show you what it does here. If I can, I don't think it'll let me get out of here. Maybe it will. No, it won't. I'll show that to you later, okay? So anyway, up under here, we're going to go to graphics, okay? And we're going to click on this new symbol here, and it puts it on like that. And then we just got to come over here and move it, and we're going to move it into place, and hopefully it will look somewhat decent. Okay, and that doesn't look bad at all. Okay, that lines up pretty well. It's not perfect, but it's good enough, I think. I'm just going to nudge it a little bit more to see about any little spaces up here. Anyway, we're going to click on the other symbol here, okay, and then come back over here, and then we're going to drag this over here. Now, here's the deal: you have to put it in perspective first. Because if you don't, then it does some weird things to it. So that's why I put it in perspective. Now, here's the deal. This is extruded way too much, so this is not going to work unless we distort this somehow. And I think we can distort it this way. Oh, we don't want to do that. I don't know if he'll let me distort it per se. Anyway, I'm not going to distort it. I don't want to distort it. What I want to do is I want to come back to my object here. And the depth of this is 4.9. Let's bring it down to 4.7 maybe? We'll see. Okay? And we'll have to move some other things too. Okay. 4.7 may work. It looks like it may need 4.6. And we're going to have to go back here and move this. So let's go back to our materials here. We got to click on this symbol, make sure the symbol's selected, and then move it into place. And it looks like it could actually be adjusted just a little bit more here. So let's go back to object and bring it down to 4.4. Okay. And then let's go and move this. Yeah, okay, I'm fine by staying on materials. All right. But in order to get to the front symbol, we have to go back to our materials and click on this one. and then we can move it into place. And now we have a 3D house, okay? And this doesn't look bad at all. We can adjust the lighting on it. So I'm going to play around with the lighting. See, we can change our lighting on it, which is really cool. You can even add more than one light source. So we can have 2 different lights on this. We can have one on this side, and maybe this one is a lot less intense, okay? And also, you can play with these other things within the lighting. You got rotation, which just basically rotates it, like what we're doing there. The height of it, which is, we can adjust that. We can make it softer if we want to. We can bring down the ambient light, because when we do that, it makes it a little darker on that side. But anyway, there's still, it's not a perfect house, because I see some things that are not lined up, but I think this will be fine for our exercise. So the final thing we got to do to this, and this is something you should do last, and that is we're going to come over here and render this. Now, I actually kind of like the look of this, because this actually kind of has this more vector kind of 3D look to it, which is really cool. And this is the way it used to work as far as the older versions of Illustrator, because there are 3D Classic up under here. When you go to 3D, you got 3D Classic, and you can extrude and bevel with the Classic version, and it will make it look like that. But they have added this other feature here within this new version, and it's the render settings. And we can render it with a wireframe, or we can do a ray trace, and that will really render it here. And when we do that, I would suggest that you keep it at low. You don't need it set at high unless you're doing something that's a high def image, or something that's going to be printed. But we're not printing these, you're just turning them in. We're looking at them on the screen. Reduce noise, you can do that. I don't do render as vector. I played around with that, and I didn't like the effect. And then we just hit render. Now, this takes a second here, and that's why I didn't want to set it up on high, because it really takes a long time. But we'll see what it looks like here after it gets rendered. And this can take a second. Now, depending upon your computer, let's see, it looks like that, which is great. It looks good. Now, if I wanted to adjust the lighting, it's going to re-render it every time, okay? So if I play around with my lighting on this and move this just a little bit, it's going to render it again, which takes a little while and can be a little slow at times. My computer is fairly fast, but it's not a brand new computer. So, if you were having to make changes to this, I would suggest turning this off and then make your changes. But anyway, this is what you'll need to turn in for our exercise. And if you have any problems, just undo it. Now, as I said before, you could do this as a and let's just get out here for just a second here, because I'm not through with this exercise, because we're going to extrude something else. So first of all, I was going to tell you that I had tried putting on the materials and then try to put it on the graphics, and this is what I got. Which looks really cool, but that's not what I was going for. And I kept the roof separate. Like, I just extruded just the house, and I put a brick texture on there, which looks really cool. But, I can't put on, I'm trying to get back into here. By the way, over here in the appearance palette, if you click on it, you can actually bring up the controls again. And let's go to our materials here, and let's just see about deleting this symbol. And you can see this brick texture looks awesome, but I can't put the windows and the doors on. I even made new symbols that did not have a color behind it, and it still did that. And so anyway, you end up having to do something more like this, which is fine, And this looks cool especially if you're doing a lot of 3D work, like making a 3D map. And one other thing I'll talk about here for just a second here is, we could duplicate this, which is awesome. if you ever want to take your 3D off, you can dump it here. This is delete effect, and it'll go back to this. All right. Now, if you want to take a look, we'll take a quick look at 3D Classic here. 3D Classic is, the controls are just a little different here. All right. You know, it's a little harder to navigate. We'll keep it at plastic. I'm trying to think of what else I'll need to do. Oh, more options we need to see. So more options. This is where you have your light, and you can move it, and then you can add another light. Okay, and we can up the intensity if we want to, or lower the intensity. We can bring in the ambient light here, lower that perhaps. Now I'm just playing around here. Okay. Right now it's set for off-axis front. We can do perspective still on it. Okay. And it's having a hard time rendering that, so it does that, which is fine. We can take the preview off and on. Sometimes that will correct it, and sometimes it won't. It didn't correct it there. But anyway, what I wanted to try to do was map art to it. Okay. So let me cancel out here for just a second here. Yeah, see, this has some definite issues. There we go. We go back to putting it in perspective. And let's see about changing the shading to diffuse shading. Okay, yeah, so I had to, sometimes with this, you have to play around. I'll put the plastic shading back on, because, you know, sometimes these controls get a little clunky, and you have to turn things off and on in order to make things work. Anyway, I was going to do the mapping of the art. And so in order to map the art on this, you have to rotate through the surfaces. And right now the first surface is this. And then we would come in and bring in our new symbol, and it puts it right on there, okay? And then we want to also shade the artwork like that. And then in order to put this on this side, we have to rotate through all these surfaces, meaning you have to go up here to the next surface. And you see the red, that shows us which surface we're on. Okay, for some reason it does this. It's catty-cornered here. It's turned, rotated, that is. So when we put this new symbol on, it does that, and we would have to rotate this symbol. And, you know, it's a little clunkier. It's just, you know, I can actually distort it here like this and make sure the artwork is shaded. But this is the older version of the 3D Classic. And you know, you may want to use this if your computer's running really slow, okay? You know, you just got to play around with it. Now, with that, I talked about all the things you could extrude here. You know, actually, you know, I've extruded this house. It has a lot more detail. You could make a barn. You can make buildings, okay? But I'm going to make something else here. I'm going to make a gear, okay? And this is what you're going to have to do. And I've already made one here. And you can see it looks cool because I put materials on it, all right? So I'm going to show you how to make this shape here. So we'll make another. So you would submit this house here, whichever one you want to do here, and you would save that and put this into our submission folder for one part of the exercise, because this exercise for 3D effects is a lot of different things we're doing, okay? So anyway, we're going to do a letter size page again, CMYK, and we're going to go to our polygon tool here, and we're going to make this shape, okay? And we're going to take the stroke off, make the fill, you know, if you want to, you could just make it gray, because we're going to put materials on this, okay? And anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to rotate this thing, okay? And you may have done this before, I don't know, but what we can do is, if we go up under Object, there's all these different things we can do here. We're going to repeat and radial. If you use iPad version of Illustrator, this will let you actually do it. And it's actually a little easier to get to, okay? But what I want to do is pull this out a little bit so we get something more like that. So I'm pulling on this here, okay? Now, if you want to actually add more, you can. If you want to have fewer, you can do this. And you can play around with where they start at. I don't want to do that though. Okay, so I want something like this to start off with. And next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and get my ellipse tool, and we'll deselect that for a moment and get my ellipse tool. And hopefully, yeah, it shows me the center. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out an ellipse, the same color, and we're going to bring it all the way up to that corner there. So as you can see, I get a gear. Now we're going to copy that and paste in front. Command C, Command F. And then we're going to hold down our Shift and our Alt key, or Shift and Option. And we're going to make this other circle smaller here. And what we're going to do is we're going to punch a hole. Okay? And the way we can punch a hole is we can do a couple things here. We can use this minus front, or we can use our shape builder. Shift M and just hold down our Alt key and punches a hole. Now, it looks just like you have a white shape on there, but there is something different here, because if you were to make another shape here with a different color, and had this go behind here, you can see that's a hole, okay, which is really cool. So now let's take this circle here, and it's actually called a compound path, by the way. I just want to point this out here, because in the old days, I'm gonna make something else here with a hole in it. We're gonna take another rectangle here, different color, and it's under object, and it's somewhere down in here, compound path and make. And I don't really need to go into this, but basically that's what it is. It's a compound path. I'll just delete that. But as you can see, our shape builder tool and our pathfinder tool does a great job of cutting that hole. Anyway, let's copy this, if I haven't done already, Command C, and then paste in front, Command F, and then we'll make this smaller, like that. Okay, now we're going to make the spokes of our gear, and let's see here if it will actually kind of line us up here. Yeah, now it's starting to, well, we'll just make a shape here, and then we'll move it over. All right. There we go. Okay, so I'm just making a rectangle like this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to go to Object, Repeat, Radial, and we'll make it larger here, like that. And then we'll move it into place like that. And now if we want to, we can put more spokes in that, like that. All right, so now we have all that. And what we want to do is we want to expand these, because right now this is, if we look at Command Y, well, we do see that, okay? But we want to expand that before we do anything else, because we want to make all this into one object. So we'll go to Object, Expand, Object, Fill. Okay, so it turns those into individual shapes that you can get to. We'll do the same thing with these shapes here. And we'll go to Object, Expand, and okay, good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take all these shapes here, and we're going to combine them. I'm going to use my Pathfinder tool. Otherwise, you could do your Shape Builder tool. But up under Window, remember I showed you where to find your Pathfinders. Okay, and then the first one is this, which is Unite. I call it Combine, because it used to be called Combine. All right, now we got this gear shape, which is pretty cool shape. And I use Illustrator a lot to make gears with. Anyway, we're going to take this shape, and we're going to go to Extrude and Bevel. All right, so we're on Classic, so we don't want Classic. Let's go to Extrude and Bevel, because what I did was the last one. Because if you go up under Effect, whatever the last thing you did is up here. So I'm going to have to go down to 3D and Extrude and Bevel this way, okay? And now let's bring this over so we can see it. And it does a great job extruding it, We're going to play around with, what angle we want to see it at. But anyway, you can do cool things like that. We can actually turn bevel on, which is awesome, because as you can see here, I'm going to try to zoom in here. Yeah, there we go. It does some cool stuff, you know. So you could do, the classic bevel. I don't think they're rounded. Rounded is kind of cool. It kind of makes it look like an inflatable toy there. Convex is kind of cool. Do steps. And here's the deal here. We can repeat this. So we get something like this. This is really neat looking. Whoa, I like that. That is really cool. And, we can change the depth so it's not so. That looks cool. I like that. And, if you want to get the same effect, you just set it up the same way as I have here. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go over to materials. And we're on graphics right now. We can actually, map a graphic onto it. I'm just curious about this flower. What would it do if we put a flower on there? Would it even know where to go? It doesn't know where to go. I don't know if it knows that. Okay, we'll take it off. Who knows what surface it was on there. Anyway, let's go to materials here. I've already got some materials that I've downloaded, but Illustrator comes with all these different materials you can play around with and see what they look like. That doesn't look bad. I like that. We'll see sandstone here. But what I did here, I'm just looking, here's gold, like if we want a golden gear, gold leaf gear, yeah, you could play around with this quite a bit and get some really cool effects here. Here's marble. And if we go down here, if we up the repeat, it actually gets smaller, the marbling effect. Here's steel. Okay. What I did to get this, I'm going to put this on here because I like this, iron rust. It's taking a second to render it here, so hold on. That's the problem sometimes. These things can oh, there we go. All right, so it's on there. The iron rust is on there. I'm going to raise the repeat on it, okay, which kind of looks cool like that. Oh, it looks really neat. I like that a lot. We can play around with the lighting on this too. Like we want to add another light source. But I'm going to show you where I found that rust at here. So I was just going to play around with maybe lighting it in two different ways here. So we get something like that. And maybe this one right here will pull down to the bottom here and just lower the intensity a bit. Maybe I'm just playing. That's why I once something is going right, I love to sit and play with stuff just to see what kind of effects I can get here. And we get this weird thing. Now, there's some issues here and there, but I still like the look of this. And anyway, let me go back to our materials here and I'll show you. So on our materials here at the there's two little buttons here. Here is find more materials. And what this will do is this will take you here to Adobe. The problem is you have to subscribe to it, and to get anything you get assets and everything. And this is something for those people who work in 3D a lot, but they're charging you $60 a month, okay? Which is quite a bit there. But, if you're working for a company or whatever and you're making a lot of 3D assets, then that would be worthwhile. But anyway, let's go over to this other button here. I just played with this today to figure it out. This is find more materials on Substance 3D community assets. And it takes you here. So these are community assets of stuff. And then we've got all kinds of materials here you can put on here. What I did was I went down and I found, we got metal. I found metal. And this is where I found it. And then I downloaded it, okay? And we can download another one here. Here's a more refined rust. Oh, by the way, this is what happens. And look at this. This is a beta version. Okay, now it's doing it. Now it comes up. Because what I had to do was I had to scroll up before. But now it finally, it brings this up. And we can download the file. Okay, and then what we would do is we come back over here to Illustrator, and we would go and find this, And this is actually in my, we'll go add materials, okay? And this is in my downloads, and this is it right here. We'll go open. And it adds it up here. And I'm just going to see what it looks like once we get it on there. And let's see. Not bad. I still like this one better, the iron rust. Yeah. And I may have to play around. I think it may have taken off all the, yeah, it took off all the repeat, all the stuff I had set up on it like this. But anyway, what you want to do is you want to set up something with a gear like this and add some materials to it, and also you want to play around and with the bevel, okay? And that's what you're going to be doing for this exercise, is these two things. And like I said, this is only one part of our exercise for the 3D effects, because the other thing I'm going to show you is how to revolve. And also, so anyways, stay tuned.